Tonight's talk is ostensibly about Sangha. Many of you know, some of you don't. Just about a month ago today, I left to go to the Providence Zen Center for what we call the Whole World is a Single Flower Conference. Every 3 years, I believe since sometime in the 1980s, the Quantum School of Zen has had a conference, or a gathering is probably a better word than a conference, called The Whole World is a Single Flower, that it's located in a different place every year, and it's kind of a gathering of our worldwide Sangha. So this year it was the Americas' time to have it in our region, so we had it at the Providence Zen Center. And we did something a little differently this time than we usually do. For example, 3 years ago, the conference was held in Korea, and it was centered at Musang-sa, which is our head temple in Korea. We spent a few days there, and we spent about another, 7 or 8 days traveling around Korea to different temples and different sites around the country. And generally, the conference has been a kind of traveling show like that. We usually have about 3 buses full of Sangha members, and we travel. This time we did something a little bit different. We stayed in one place. It was one day in the middle of the week that we all got on buses and went to Newport, Rhode Island for the day and just kind of enjoyed the ocean and the town. But other than that, we stayed at the Providence Zen Center. And by the weekend, we had a gathering of about 150 people from 17 different countries around the world. And the Quantum School of Zen is set up in regions. So there's the regions of the Americas, which is primarily the United States, with a couple of itinerant members in Canada, and we do have some members scattered around Mexico, and I think we might have a very small group in Panama, and I've heard about some groups in Argentina, and there used to be one in Brazil, but I don't know how that is. But we also have a region in Europe, Eastern and Western Europe. In 2008, we had the conference in Poland, which is pretty much the origin of the European Sangha for us. In the late 1970s, Zen Master Bon Soeng started traveling to Poland. And we probably have, I would guess, about 7 or 8 Zen centers in Poland, and the Sangha grew in Europe, including Eastern and Western Europe. We probably have, I don't really even know how many. But in many of the places you would think of going in Europe, there's a little Zen center there. If you wanted to go to Prague, there's one in Prague. There's some in the countryside in the Czech Republic, in Slovakia, in St. Petersburg, there's a beautiful center outside of Barcelona. There's a group in Barcelona, and they rent a retreat place about 4 hours outside of Barcelona in the mountains. If you're on Facebook and you see any of these pictures, it's gorgeous, and they have these amazing, I don't think there's a power or electricity, they're off the grid, they grow vegetables there, and they have these beautiful retreats. They sit out overlooking these amazing mountains. It's just incredible. We have 4 Zen centers in Israel, which is part of the European Sangha. In England, there are a few. Brussels, I could go on, I won't get them all. And then the Asian region is a little different than the European and the American region. The Asian regions tend to be monastic-led. We have a very large temple in Hong Kong, which is run by Zen Master Day Kwan. She's a Chinese woman who actually, I believe, grew up Muslim, spent a lot of time in Thailand. She lived in a cave for a couple of years. And she and I received transmission at the same time. And she has this lovely temple in Hong Kong and a small retreat place on Lantau Island, which is part of Hong Kong, but it's a more rural area. Recently, a nun from Malaysia who has a pretty large temple in Kuala Lumpur has gotten Inca and is a Jito Popsanim in our school. She's got a very large temple. We have a couple of centers in Penang Island in Malaysia, which is basically our Asian, if you go outside of Korea, the Asian Sangha tends to be the Chinese diaspora around Asia. So the people in Malaysia tend to be Chinese. Singapore, the same thing. And it's interesting in both Singapore and Malaysia because the temples there, in many ways, are traditional Mahayana Buddhist temples. But Ge Mun Sanim, a monk in Singapore, and I can never get her name right, Chung Wen Sanim, I believe, in Hong Kong, in Malaysia, they both heard Zen Master Bon Soeng's teaching. Some before he died, but many afterward. And there was something about our simple Zen teaching of don't know mind, correct situation, relationship, and function, substance, truth, and function, are very simple, basic Zen teachings offered them something that traditional Mahayana Buddhism didn't offer them, and even more importantly, the people who come to their temples. From afar, and I may not have this exactly right, but as I look into what they're doing in their temples, it seems that creating a Zen practice allows people a chance to practice, to ask the great question and actually do their own work of practice. In traditional Buddhism, perhaps you go to the temple, you chant, you make offerings, it's a more traditional way of religion. But Zen offers a way to make it personal. What am I? That fundamental question. And it seems to capture people's imagination. In a way, it's a little bit, this is a funny connection I'm making right now, but it's a little Protestant in its view. You don't need an intermediary. You yourself can do the work. The teachings are wonderful. A Dharma talk like this is very valuable. But most important is doing my own work. What am I? Always and everywhere, keeping that great question, what am I? So it's fascinating to see how one simple teaching can spread around the world, be taken by people in different cultures with different worldviews, and still find a relevance. Because our simple practice brings us right back to this moment. Zen Master Bon Soeng would always ask us, what are you doing right now? It's not theoretical. Practice is alive in the very moment we're living. The teaching helps us, it's a guidepost. But right now, the teaching won't help you. You have to be alive. You have to have a clear mind. You have to, and not you, we have to use our don't know to be open and alive, and the natural wisdom that we have can manifest. But nobody can give that to us. We have to find it for ourselves. So, one of the things we did at this conference, which was again a little bit different, we had a theme, and the theme for the conference was Green Dharma. So we started looking at environmental issues. And some of us, especially in the United States, I think we were a little bit jaded. Really? We're going to talk about environmental issues? We've been talking about environmental issues for so long. But remember, we're a worldwide Sangha. So it's so easy to take for granted what we think we know. But to be with people exploring an issue just opened up a lot that would be surprising. So the way the conference was structured, in the mornings, well, half of the day, we would talk about quantum school stuff, presentations from different regions. And of course, in any conference like this, the main thing that happens is you get to know people. In the afternoons, or one of the other half of the day, we would actually look at climate change, anthropomorphic vision of the world. How do we include more than humans in our practice? But I think for most of us, the real beauty is being with Sangha. So imagine you're with 150 people from all over the world who do the same practice. The kindness, the connection that develops among the group was really remarkable. And as I say, we have them every 3 years, and I'd really encourage you, if you can get away for a couple of weeks in, I guess it will be 2020, we'll be in Singapore and Malaysia. And it'll be a lovely experience. We'll be probably in Kuala Lumpur for much of the time. Traveling through Malaysia is fascinating. The food is just incredible. You won't believe the food. The vegetarian cooking, the 10-course meals that you get at every meal. The thing that you're afraid you're eating, the piece of meat, is actually vegetarian meat, but you wouldn't know it. I mean, it's just incredible. Singapore the same way. So that's my plug. But now I want to talk about a specific thing that happened at the conference. The conference program was created by one of the Jiddu Popsanims, Jo Potter, who's in Vienna, and her partner is an ecologist, Jan Sensimir. He's been part of the quantum school. Actually, many of us might remember we had a Skype session about these issues to help formulate the conference. And actually, I was told that the Skype session that they had with us was really quite lively and very valuable for them in the creation of the conference. And they brought over someone from Poland who does things that he calls a game. I think I would call it a simulation. And I want to just talk a little bit about it and talk about an experience that I had in it. So what they asked us, the simulation, the game took place on Saturday morning. So towards the end of the week, before the simulation, they asked us to sign up for roles. They described this, it was a little bit like improv. What they did was, they set some conditions, and then they said, go. And basically, we had to enact this. So it was very participatory, very experiential. So there were topics like government, agriculture, energy production, medical, law enforcement. There probably were a couple of others that I'm not remembering. And so, you signed up in pairs. There were enough people that you always worked with another person. And then what they did was they created 3 countries: a poor country, a moderately wealthy country, and a rich country. And they told people where your job was. So I signed up to be in government, since I'm always interested in government, and I thought it would be interesting. So it ended up that myself and my partner and 2 other people were the government for the rich country. And what they did in this game, like I said, it was focused a lot on global warming. And it's so hard to explain, really. But they set some scenarios, and there were also media people who were putting out, not quite a newspaper, but there would be headlines, and information would start to flow. And so the game starts going, and energy has to be created because energy is wealth, and that's how the country gained their wealth. So just to make this simple, I'll just talk about my own experience. So as the game progressed, it turns out that one of the scenarios that starts to play out was that there's a epidemic in the poor country, in the poorest country, and migration is beginning to happen. And suddenly, I mean, we hear about it, I'm in the government, and we hear about this in a headline. So, and remember, this is experiential, so I have to respond. And my instinct was, close the borders. If we let these sick people in without tight borders, they're going to make us all sick, and it's my job to protect our country. And I started, you know, we were playing, we were play acting, but it was also serious. And immediately I felt this dissonance inside myself. I was advocating positions that I really thought I had to do that didn't really jibe with my political philosophy. And I was stuck with this feeling that, well, I have to do this. I have to protect the people. And then my belief system didn't jibe. And to me, that was fascinating. That I had certain responsibilities, and I was stuck. So the game progresses a little more. I guess, you know, one of the things that I discovered as a government person, you have no idea what's going on. None. I hear headlines, people come asking me for things, but I don't know what's happening. There's no time. And I was thinking how it must be true for our governments too. You know, their representatives, they don't really know what's happening. They only know what people tell them. So information is always suspect. But we have to act. Things are happening rapidly. You have to do something, but you don't know what to do. But you have to do something. So the game is going on, and then I get this little piece of paper that says, your job is to advocate for a rocket program to go to Mars, because the environment is going to get so bad that you've got to get your people out of here. So suddenly my job was to advocate for a Mars expedition, which was going to take so much of our money. There was no money left really to help other people, to do any of the things that you'd want to do. But it's my job to follow the instructions. So suddenly, on to Mars! And we're cheerleading this Mars expedition. And I got kicked out of office. There was a way in the game for people to recall us and get rid of us. And I got kicked out. And because the person who instigated the recall was in the medical place, we changed roles. Me and my partner, and him and his partner changed roles. Suddenly, I'm in the medical world, and I see they've completely made it socialistic. They're giving things away. They're telling people to pay whatever they have. It's okay. And, you know, now I'm in the medical field, and that's what we're doing. So, okay, I play along. And in the government, they don't care what the instruction was. They got rid of all of our going off to Mars, and they're giving everything away. But it struck me that it became totally unrealistic. It's clear to me, but I'm probably not making it so clear why I'm talking about this. I think the primary thing I'm talking about is this dissonance that happens. That we have these beliefs, we have these ideas, And then in the actual living of things, it never works out the way we want. There was this situation at the Cambridge Zen Center that happened in the last couple of months, and I'm going to be really vague here. And the situation got dealt with, and then there was all this reverberation on social media. People started posting things without really knowing what happened. And it's so easy to blast leadership. Of course leadership is wrong, right? This person has a complaint, they make their complaint, well, it sounds reasonable enough, and then people start supporting them and trashing, really, the leadership. People in leadership, first of all, they can't really talk about what happened, and I know, because I know the inside story, how much they worked on this situation and tried so hard to be just, and how difficult the situation actually was. But unless you know the situation, you can't really say, but we all say all the time. It's so easy to have an opinion. It's so easy to take a few little facts and turn it into a story that isn't the whole story. But we do that all the time. And evolutionary psychologists like to say that we have to do that. Our brain is programmed so that we make quick judgments, because you have to decide what to do right away or you might be eaten. So we have a bias towards rushing to conclusions. That's human. It's not bad or good, but it is what happens. And our practice has something to do with being aware of our propensities and working with them, not just unconsciously giving into them. But this don't know mind, it's such a deep teaching. If we can really live knowing that we don't know, it changes everything. It's really my experience, and I teach this, and I've been practicing it for 40 odd years, and yet I'm constantly finding myself jumping to conclusions, making assumptions that really aren't backed up by the facts. It's practice to be aware of what we're doing, to bring our not knowing mind to the very situation we're in. And when we're listening, remembering that we don't know the whole story, and to be humble enough to know that we don't know. And now here's the really tricky part. In the same moment that we know that we don't know, we can also trust our don't know and respond, because we have to respond. So this isn't a call for passivity. This is a call for awakeness. And to remember, if we remember how easy it is to make mistakes, then we can be careful. What are you doing just now? Be careful. Watch your step. It doesn't mean don't do anything, but be aware and awake as we're acting. And it's my experience that if we pay attention to the world around us, we get actually pretty quick feedback. And if we can include the feedback, the breadth of what we do actually know actually can increase. And we can become more wise in our actions by paying attention to the results of our actions. It seems to me that our unconscious way of living is based on what I think of as a kind of confirmation bias. We pick out of the world things that support our worldview. and we ignore things that contradict it. So an unaware, a non-aware way of living is grabbing onto things that confirm what we already believe. And by doing that, we sustain our false self. If we want to contact or get in touch with our true nature, then we have to take in all the feedback. We have to be careful about how easy it is to use our surroundings and the results of our actions in a skewed way just to make ourselves right, to pump up our sense of reality. There's something in the wisdom of the group that increases the possibility, I think, of getting it right. Now, groups can also be very messy and uncomfortable and make messes of things. But in the trial and error of it, something can arise out of it. But too often, I think, we just believe our own ideas and we just keep confirming that we're right without really investigating, without really bringing not knowing to the heart of the matter. And if I can connect this a little bit to Sangha, we can help each other do that. If we listen, if we take each other in, probably just the part of the other person that is difficult for any one of us is just the part that we need to listen a little more closely to. There's a Gurdjieffian story about, they had this group, and I don't know enough about it to set it up exactly right, but apparently there was one person in the, what we would call Sangha, who everybody hated. They were just a pain. And finally that person left, and Gurdjieff sent people out to bring him back, because that dissonance brings wisdom. If there's too much harmony, too much agreement, we get skewed. That little irritant in our shoe keeps us awake. And I guess the last thing I'll say is the sense of being in the community with 150 people who are doing this same practice, at least on the group experience, you can see how easy it is. Somebody says, we need somebody to help here. Boom, 5 people are there. The open-heartedness, the ability to love, not in a mushy, romantic, saccharine way, but just to have an open heart, to care about everyone as family, and maybe not as nuclear family, which we all know. We wouldn't necessarily hang out with each other, but within the context of the Sangha, we support each other's practice. And we understand the importance of not knowing. And hopefully, as we try to manage things, we can be open-hearted enough to listen and to acknowledge what we know and assert, but also be open to what we don't know and to be receptive. And it is possible. And Sangha helps us find that.